does God exist? Right? It's a fair question. Now, if there was any kind of solid proof that God existed, some kind of evidence of God, then if someone could prove that scientifically, then whoever would definitely win a Nobel Prize, and we would hear all about it, and scientists would all become religious in some way, right? If someone could actually prove that God exists scientifically. So no one's done that yet. No one has proved that God exists scientifically. Now, if there was solid proof the other way around, that God does not exist, then that would be the end of all religions, right? Well, maybe not all, because some religions would prefer to ignore that fact. But if there was hard, cutting proof of the lack of existence of God, then at least a lot of people, millions if not billions, would start rethinking their religion and their beliefs. And we see that's not happening. The problem is how the question is being framed. That in itself is flawed. And throughout this session, we'll understand why and how to frame it. So in today's session, we're going to provide an answer to this question, does God exist? And we're going to base the answer on a 6,000-year-old wisdom, the wisdom of Kabbalah. It's a science, it's a method that has even laid out the foundations to monotheistic religions. It's a method that was studied not only by Abraham and by Moses, but also by scientists like Pythagoras. Even Newton studied Kabbalah. So, does God exist? Let's find out. Okay, welcome to Kabbalah Explained Simply. I'm Gil Shear, and this week we're answering the question, does God exist? So, before we get started, I would appreciate it if you can just write in the chat, say hi, say where you're from. I always love seeing the variety of people from all around, from all religions and nationalities and countries and ages and genders and everything. I love seeing it in the chat. So say hi and where you're from. Just like Matthias did from Smuri, and Laura did from California, I guess, and Victor from the Netherlands. So keep going, write in the chat. It'll be great to see. And Lara from Portugal. Hi, Lara. That's great. So we want to answer the question, does God exist, right? So I've prepared a presentation for you today. That in this presentation, when I was preparing for this session, then I was looking, looking up at the internet to see what people are talking about on this topic. And it's pretty interesting to see the different arguments for, God does exist and no, God doesn't exist. And of course, they're all labeled with proof in big, bold writing. Of course, it's not really proof, it's some kind of argument. So let's take a look at, before we start answering this question, which we will answer this question. Let's first take a quick look at what different people and organizations and religions are saying on the internet about the existence or lack of existence of God. Okay, so let's bring the first argument. God does exist. This is an argument. This is not Kabbalah's argument. This is just online. This is how people are proving that God exists. So argument number one, God does exist because what are the chances that it doesn't? So this is quite interesting. I actually like numbers. So this is the argument. The probability of the expansion rate of the universe is 1 divided by 10 to the power of 55. That's a really, really tiny probability. It's basically the same odds as rolling 6 on the die 70 times in a row. So 6 after 6 after 6, 70 times in a row without missing even once. Following that theory, it would take 1 trillion years until the right circumstances for the Big Bang to take place. So the argument here that God does exist is because it's almost no probability of it happening any other way. Well, I think that's a very weak argument, because if we have infinite time before the Big Bang, for example, then even though it might take 1 trillion years, over infinite time, it's bound to happen. So, in conclusion, I hope you heard the sound effect. I was looking for that for a while. In conclusion, wait, let's do it again. Okay. Weak. It's a weak argument, right? Because infinite time, There's a chance for everything and anything to happen. So probability here, I don't think that's a good argument. Let's take another look. Let's take a look at another one. God does not exist. This is an argument that people use to prove that God does not exist. And what's the argument? Well, there's too much evil in the world. There's no way that there is a God, right? So, you can pour into this formula pretty much anything. Go to a children's hospital, you see children suffering. That's proof there's no God. Just look at the suffering in the world in general. There can't be a God. Look at the starving people in Africa. Proof there's no God. So it's basically a template like this. Look at something bad. That is proof that there is no God. Now, I can understand where this argument comes from. If people experience bad things, then they tend to say, there can't be this caring being that's taking care of me, because in that case, why am I suffering, right? But it's a little bit, I would even say, childish to have this kind of approach, because looking at different parts of nature or different parts of a timeline, it doesn't necessarily paint you the full picture, right? Maybe we're in the process of something, right? And I think we can see examples of this all around us. I mean, every level of evolution, of a new form of development, be it the single cellular organisms that evolved into higher levels, and be it, every form of this development always has a phase of conflict in it. And following that phase of conflict is usually a phase that the parts begin to understand that it's worth their while to cooperate, and then they cooperate in a certain way that leads them to evolve to a higher level, right? So maybe everything that seems to be bad now it is bad, but it could be leading to a better outcome that we're not yet aware of. I'm not saying that it is, I'm just saying that it's a plausible argument, right? Even look at, a teenager, for example. So teenagers can be horrible and mean, and they're not model human beings, right? If all of humanity were teenagers, then Lord of the Flies or something. But a teenager is in a phase of, self-development and self-realization, and they're beginning to test their own boundaries and build their personalities, and then by the age of, say, 20, 21, 22, they're kind of molded into an adult. And then we can understand that this process made them who they are today, right? So too much evil in the world is an understandable argument, but in conclusion, it is a weak argument, because it's looking at a fragmented part of reality and saying, okay, I'm looking at this tiny thing, I don't like it, so there can't be some kind of bigger picture here. All right, let's keep going. I'll be looking at questions in a second. If you have any questions, then write them in the chats, and I'll take a look at them when we finish. Just a couple of more examples of proof that God does or doesn't exist. So let's see another one. God does exist. It can explain gaps. The God of gaps. You might have heard of this. It's pretty popular. It's pretty funny, actually, as well. I mean, not laughing at anyone, but it's basically saying that if you can't explain something, it must be God, right? There are weird sounds and lights from the sky, lightning, thunder. Well, it must be a God. Let's call it Zeus, right? And that's how humanity developed for thousands and thousands of years. Every unexplainable phenomena was labeled to a certain God. Then came the monotheistic religions and said there's one God that governs all of these forces, etc. But it's a pretty primitive argument because today it's clear that if we can't explain something scientifically, then it just means that we could be lacking scientific tools. And if we'll wait a little bit, then we'll be able to discover these things, like when science discovered germs and bacteria through looking in a microscope. Suddenly it opened up, you understood why people get sick. Before that, it was the act of God. And then you prayed to a God to not get the flu or get someone else get the flu. And then here came the microscope, and we could see all these things we couldn't see before. So the God of gaps in conclusion, weak. It's a weak argument. It's not a strong argument. Okay, what else do we have? Another one that God does exist, another claim that God does exist, and this is an interesting one. It says this: complexity must have a designer. So if you're looking at something complex, then it must have been designed by something with greater complexity, right? So if there's something complex, it must have been designed by higher complexity. That higher complexity, let's say we call it God. So that means that we're complex. God created us. He's more complex. But if you continue with that logic, then if God is complex, then he should also have a higher being with higher complexity that created God. And that being should also have a higher being of higher complexity that created it, and so on. So we go into this never-ending loop. So using that example to say God exists is, in fact, a weak argument. Yes, it's weak. Okay. And here's another one. God does not exist. This is an interesting argument. Because why should it? Right? So if you want to claim that there are fairies and unicorns and other magical creatures, you can claim that. But the onus is on you to prove that they do exist, and not on everyone else to prove that they don't exist, right? So this is actually a fair argument. I wouldn't call this a weak argument. I would actually say this is a pretty strong argument, because if you're claiming that there is a force that we can't see, then you should prove why you claim that. And this actually goes in line with the approach of the wisdom of Kabbalah, excuse me, which basically says, right, you do not have to, you can't say God exists unless you prove it. That's the approach. So, in short, what all of these examples show is that the wrong question is being asked, right? We're looking at the wrong question. Why we're looking at the wrong question? Because you shouldn't be asking if God exists or doesn't exist, right? Instead, you should be asking, what is God, and can I discover this force? That's the question that you should be asking, all right? So I'm going to take a quick pause because I want to take a look at your questions. So, where are they? Questions are... Okay, here they are. Okay, so I can see that you guys are commenting already, and it's great that you're commenting. Okay, I'm just going to read some questions. I'm not going to answer them because some of them will already be answered throughout the session, but MD Suarev is saying, if you believe that God gives you your life, so how can you judge your creator's power? Well, that's already assuming that you believe God gave you your life, right? Others might say that you were born to your mother and it's a result of birth and not by necessarily a force, right? So let's take a look at some more comments. Okay. So, Gilad, you have a great name. He's saying, after much thought from me personally, the definition of God is the force that drives life in the universe. It's not an entity, but it's a force. Very interesting approach. Benny is saying, I think that all answers are correct. Okay. Now, Gilad is asking, how does Kabbalah interpret God? We will get to that. We've only started, and we're definitely going to get to that question. That's what this session is about. So, I'm going to go back to the presentation. Let's take a look. Keep writing questions. I'm going to be seeing them, and I'm going to take another shot at the questions in a moment. So let's go back and let's continue. So where were we? We were here. Okay. So the question that we should be asking is not does God exist, but maybe to understand what this force is, and even more importantly, and this is the important question really, this is what you should be asking, can I discover this force? Right? Now, why is this an important question? Because if someone tells you that there is God, well, you might believe them and you might not believe them. But believing here isn't the solution, because if you're based on belief, then that's basically what religion is. And the wisdom of Kabbalah is not religion, it's a science. So we want to go further than just believing someone and saying, okay, I believe that God exists, and therefore I'm going to devote my life to following a set of rules written in a certain book because I believe someone that told me God exists. So let's take a look for a second at what God is. Okay? So, okay, wait a second, sorry, switch that, yes, here we go. Okay, so what is God? God is a law of nature. That's what God is. It's a force. Everything around you, it's an overall encompassing law of everything that exists, of the still, the vegetative, of the animate. It's not some mystical entity. It's not some voodoo or long-bearded person sitting up in the skies. It's none of that. It's a general force of everything around us, still, vegetative, animate, and everything. Now, what does that even mean? So let's jump in a step further and let's try and understand what that means. Okay, so, all right, we're over here. Great. So imagine this is the spectrum of perception. Let's make it a bit thicker. So let's say this is a spectrum of perception, right? So this is, on one edge is 0% perception, and on the other edge is 100% perception. Perception of what? Of reality, of everything around us. So you might assume that, if we're looking at nature, still rocks, minerals, etc., vegetative animal, vegetative plants, and growing trees, etc., animals, and then human beings, then you might say it's probably something like this, right? So you'd have the still with some low level of perception, vegetative has higher, animate has even higher, and human beings, humans have even higher, right? And maybe not 100%, but getting closer to it. In fact, that is not the case. It's something a lot closer to this. So 0%, well, that's nothing. Even the still has some interaction with reality, so it has some kind of perception of it, right? And we're talking about the spectrum of perception. So let's say the still would be over here, and the vegetative would be over here, and the animals would be over here, and human beings would be over here. So they're all within a tiny portion of perception. Now, really interesting, they actually experimented on this, and what they did is they connected a person to electrodes and they measured their interaction with, you could say, reality. So they basically wanted to see what portion of reality a person can actually interpret and interact with. So you might have heard this, it's pretty incredible numbers. So they found that a person interacts with 400 billion bytes of information every second, and they found that a person is only able to interpret how many? Is it 2 billion? No. Is it 2 million? No. 2,000. That's it. Out of the 400 billion bytes of information that the brain is exposed to every single second, the human brain is only able to interpret 2,000 of them. You like percentages? So that's 0.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5%. That's what this experiment found, that we only are able to interpret 0.000000005% of reality. So what does that even mean, right? So let's take a look a step further, what that means. And all of this is bringing us to answer the question of not does God exist, but first of all, what is God? What is this force? Right? If we understand what it is, then maybe we can ask the question of does it exist, or if it does, then how can I discover it? Because that's the important question here. So what does that actually mean? It means that instead of trying to imagine yourself as some kind of part of nature, and you're interacting with everything in nature, and nature is interacting with you, so you have everything in nature. That's a beautiful tree. I know, I'm an artist, etc. That's not the case. You could say the case is something a lot closer to this, that you're like this closed box that has only 5 openings to reality. So this is you, and you have only 5 openings to something, to the outside reality, and these 5 openings are your senses, right? So you have, sense of smell, touch, hearing, tasting, and seeing, and these are your 5 senses. And you see something, meaning something interacts with you. You're interacting with something, right? We said 2,000 bytes of information we're interacting with. So something is going into my eye, right? Something, I don't even know what it is. It's just some form of energy. And my brain interprets it, and it paints some kind of picture of reality. And same with hearing, touching, smelling, tasting, etc. So all of these things, they go through these senses of mine, which aren't really even openings to what's outside of me. They're more like filters, because I don't know what is outside, right? All I know is what I interpret. So this is a big question mark. And we're in a system that we don't even know what this system is. We just know that we're interacting with something, and we see according to a certain program or software, which is us. So Kabbalists, which are scientists that have researched, developed tools, and conducted experiments to interact with this force of nature, have found what this is. They gave it a name. They called it light. Sounds a bit mystical, but it's not, and I'll explain further throughout the session. You can call it God if you want, although it's not God of religions. It's not this being. It is simply a force of nature. A force in reality that exists, but it's a force that is, you could even think of it like gravity. Gravity is a force, right? It's not looking over you and saying, are you behaving well, etc. It governs everything in reality, right? And you can either take it into account or not. And if you do or you don't, then you'll have responses from this force, both gravity and this force that these scientists, these Kabbalists, called light. So, in fact, Kabbalah says, yes, there is a force. You can call it God again, but maybe you might want to call it the force of nature, because it's everything, right? But can we discover this force? That would be the next question. So I want to take a quick pause, and I want to show you a video clip with my teacher, Kabbalist Dr. Michael Lightman, in an interview with Larry King. Just a quick clip. Let's take a look.
Do you believe in God?
I don't believe. The wisdom of Kabbalah says that this is the method for the revelation of God to every single person in this life, in this world. Revealing, not believing.
Do you pray?
Praying means asking for something good to happen in human relationships. Everything depends on human relationships. There's nothing else to ask for.
Have you always been this way?
I wasn't always like that. I was a scientist. I was looking for a meaning in life, until I discovered it in the wisdom of Kabbalah, also scientifically. And since then, once I tested it on myself, I want to pass it on to others. And there's a part of humanity that gets it from me. But this is possible because we are dealing with the laws of nature here. It's not God you have to pray to, you have to fear. We are in contact with the laws of nature, and we have to influence them. It's a system that's
So it's a system. We're in contact with this law all the time. We're surrounded by it. We're immersed in it. And we have to not believe that it exists. Not listen to someone that tells you, yes, God exists, and this is what he says, and you've got to do this, and you've got to do that. No. That's why a Kabbalist answered the question, do you believe in God, with an immediate response, no, I don't believe. What does that mean, I don't believe? It means that in order to answer the question about the existence of God, then you have to attain this force yourself and not be satisfied by anything that is less than that. So let's keep going a little bit further. So what do we need in order to discover this force, right? Can we prove that it exists? Well, you cannot prove that it exists unless you develop a measuring device for it. Because just like any scientific method, right? If there's like physics, for example, so you have some theory, and in order to prove the theory, then you'll develop some kind of experiment, and you'll conduct that experiment in different circumstances, and then every scientist, if they want to validate your theory and your findings, then they'll have to be able to replicate that same experiment, right? So that would define it as scientific. So the wisdom of Kabbalah is exactly the same. The only difference is the measuring tool that you need in order to conduct this experiment is a tool that you need to build within. And it's not a philosophical tool, it's not a theoretical tool, it's not something that you imagine. It's an actual internal device which has measurements, which has even numbers. You know, it even has a geometrical structure inside, and that's the tree of life, which you might have heard of. The entire study of the structure of the tree of life, of the 10 Sephirot, which explains this internal structure, this internal device. And these books were written by these Kabbalists, these scientists that were able to develop that device themselves, and they were able to conduct the experiment to discover this force of nature. And not only that, Kabbalists that came every generation were able to replicate the same experiments. And that is the answer of the wisdom of Kabbalah. God does not exist unless and until you discover it for yourself. How? Simple. You need to develop that measuring device. End of slideshow. So, let's take a quick look. I'm sure some questions have piled up here. Let's have a look. Oh, wow. Okay, great. Okay, so how much, Benny's asking, how much connection bring us in percent? Can we check it precisely? So I think, Benny, if I understand correctly, you're referring to that illustration that I did before about that axis of perception, and you're asking if we connect between us, then does our perception rise? The answer is yes, and I'll even explain why the answer is yes. Because this system that I was referring to, which Kabbalists discovered, it's a very complex system. It's not a simplistic system. It's based on simplistic principles, very, very simple laws. There's a law of light and a law of a vessel, a law of plus and a law of minus. But the interactions between these two simple forces, it leads to very complex combinations, you could say. So let's say we're here. My wife always makes fun of my stick figures. I'm not sure how to draw them. Try to put the hands up or hands down. Very important. Anyway, so we're here, each and every one of us, and let's say we want to discover this system. So you don't want to take my word for it, because you shouldn't, but I'm telling you that there is a method developed, discovered by a group of people over thousands of years who what's the word? Who wrote down their writings, liking the word, who wrote down their findings and developed this entire method of Kabbalah. Kabbalah, by the way, means reception, how to receive, because that's what it is. Interacting with this force is unlocking the potential to receive infinite fulfillment. That's what this system is. So these people that are us, for example, are now, each and every one of us is like locked in that box with 5 senses, right? And we want to unlock this box. We want to develop that sense that will connect us directly to this force. Well, in fact, this force, we didn't really talk about what it is, but it's a force. This is what Kabbalists found. They found that it's a force of absolute love, absolute giving, absolute bestowal, absolute fulfillment, and an absolute connection. And because it's a force of absolute connection, of wholeness, of harmony, then if we begin between us to practice connection with a goal to unlock this force, then we begin to build what is called a vessel, a kli. And a vessel is already a spiritual device which is able to receive light. Basically, a vessel, think of it, it's called a vessel because a vessel can contain, right? That's why it's called a vessel. And what it can contain is light. So yes, by forming this connection, then we can build a vessel that can expand our perception. And it's actually, Benny, it's not that we rise on the scale of this perception of this world, but we unlock a device that enables us to perceive a different layer, a different level of reality completely. So it's not like you can see more and you'll see things around you floating in the air, because that's just thinking of using your eyesight and extending it. But instead, you'll be able to develop a sense that can connect you to something beyond. Now, why is it difficult to explain? It's because it's hard to explain about a sense before you have that sense. And, think about this example. If I tell you that you do have another sense, can you try and imagine what that extra sense is? Even just describe it without having it. Just try and imagine what a 6th sense would be like, right? You can't. It's impossible, right? I'd actually love to see you try. If anyone has an idea, go ahead, write it in the chat. What could an additional sense be like? So, like, let's say if I would be lacking the sense of sight, then I would say, okay, I might have another sense which will enable me to see the reality around me. That would be sight. So, can you think of a sense like that? Feeling. Okay. Feeling is what interprets all your senses, right? You can see things and that can make you feel, and you can hear and that makes you feel, etc. So I don't know if feeling would really be a sense. Okay, sorry. Yeah, there we go. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Okay. Daniel is asking, does everyone have its own kli, or is it more together? That's a great question, Daniel, and let me just say something quick. Daniel, I think I already saw your questions on Kabbalah. If I'm not mistaken, that's you. And I'll just take this opportunity to share with you a little bit about the platform that we've built that has one goal only. The goal is to develop that tool, right? So it's built on the method of authentic Kabbalah, a thousands of year old method, which was started by Adam and continued by a series of Kabbalists, of Abraham, of Moses, of Rashbi, of the Ari, of Bala Sulam San the Rabash, his student and successor, Kabbalist Dr. Michael Lattman, who is my teacher. And we built an online platform which is based on these Kabbalistic principles that enables you to, first of all, learn and also to develop this inner device. This platform is called Kabbalah, and if you're from Kabbalah, then maybe write in the chat, say hi, and then we'll see that we already have students here in Kabbalah, possibly, and if you enjoy it, then even better. Then if you can even write that. And if you don't, then just send me an email. And I'm just kidding. Write whatever you want. and you can check out the link, which Linda will post in just 1 second, of how you can join KabU. And if you want to just check it out, you can start off with a 14-day free trial, which will give you access to courses and to instructors. And it will also give you access to what we're going to have in just 20 minutes, under 20 minutes. We're going to have a KabU Zoom session, which is an exclusive, intimate gathering on Zoom with all of the KabU members, where we'll continue this session in a kind of an intimate setting where students can ask questions live with their cameras open, and we talk and we do some workshops, and basically we practice this method of building this force between us. So if you want to check it out, if you even check it out now, you might even still be able to join the Zoom. You'll see how you can join the Zoom there. And if you have any questions about anything about KabU, about the Zoom, then you can just check out, you can just email info@kabuconnect.com. If you want to know, where's the Zoom link for the session, I can't find it, then just email info@kabuconnect.com. I'm sure Linda will post that here in a second as well. So why am I telling you about KabU? Because it's really, well, first of all, because I'd be really happy if you joined, and you should know that everything, all of the income that we make from KabU we're a non-profit, so it's all spent on creating more content and on making this method accessible to more and more people. So back to your question, Danielle. So does everyone have its own kli, or is it more together? So everyone has something, but it's not a kli. So sometimes when people say, my soul, I have a soul, etc. So I answer a pretty harsh answer to that. And the answer is, you have no soul. And then people usually get really irritated. What do you mean I have no soul? Etc., etc. And the answer is simple. There is only a single soul. And that's the only thing that existed. And what we all are is we are the shattered pieces of that soul, of that collective soul. Now, we're kind of already even biochemically built for connection, right? If we are connected positively to other people, then our brain emits oxytocin, which is a really, really good hormone that has incredible benefits, like efficiency, it can make you heal faster, it makes you live longer, it makes you better at solving problems, it makes you people who have positive connections even make more money, and etc. So, and the opposite is the same. If we're alienated, then our brain emits cortisol, which can lead to depression, etc. So it's like our bodies are already built for this connection, but we have something in addition to that, and that's what differentiates human beings from the rest of the levels of nature, from the still, vegetative, and animate. And what is that extra thing that we have? We have ego. That's what we are, actually. We're an ego. So according to Kabbalah, going back to this again, each and every one of us have a point. In Kabbalah we call it a point in the heart. So the heart is the collection of all of our egoistic desires, of all of our wants, and the point in the heart that each and every one, every single person in humanity has this point. For some people it's already awakened, and for others it's not. And basically this point is simply a desire that comes from this higher level. That's why when this point awakens in a person, they start asking, what am I doing here? What is this life? Why am I alive? How can I rise to something higher? What's the purpose of everything? Those questions come from that point, because that point is pushing to a higher level of evolution. That's all it is. So these points, they're like a dot, right? So, what's the volume of a dot, the area of a dot? It has none. It's infinitesimally small, right? So that's what we are. We're a dot, a shattered part of a collective soul, of a collective kli. And that's why one of the main principles of developing that internal device is connection. Now, it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to be a social person and friendly even. You can be grumpy and an introvert, and you can still build this connection because the connection that you build with other people is internal. It's an internal form of connection, right? So, ask our students at KabU, even though some of them are like these and some are like those, and some are introverts and some are extroverts, it doesn't matter. We focus on understanding and building this internal connection. Excuse me. Okay, let's take a look at some more questions because we don't have a lot of time left. What is the measuring device? Question from Welsh. Hold on, excuse me 1 second. Okay, that's better. So Welsh Dan is asking, what is the measuring device? That is a great question, and I will answer that question. So the measuring device, think of it first of all, just to better understand what it is. Imagine you're sitting in a room now. You don't have to imagine, you probably are. And I'm going to tell you, listen to all the music around you. So you'll either take it in a kind of philosophical way and say, yeah, I hear the music, or you'll think I'm crazy. Or you'll think that you're crazy for not hearing the music. But I'm insisting, listen to the music around you. There's music all around you. And then what's the solution to this little riddle? The solution is simple. There is music all around you. All you need is a radio device. Turn it on, and then you'll be able to tune into that frequency. Right? Easy. So then you'll find that there is music all around you. There are hundreds of radio channels that are sending radio waves probably in the very room that you are in now. Right? So that's the measuring device. We are immersed, and the only thing that's around us is this light. That's what Kabbalists have found. It's a force of infinite love and pleasure. Now, just like the radio device, in order to tune in to, let's say, 88 FM, you need to tune the radio to internally be tuned to 88 FM. So in order for you to be able to connect to this force that's outside of you, you need to build a device that is equal in its qualities to that force. All right? Think about that. You need to build an internal device in order to interact with that force of nature, creator, God, call it what you want to call it. Just don't imagine some long-bearded dude sitting up there and saying, behave well or I'll punish you, because that's not what it's about. It's about a force of reality. And it's a force of infinite fulfillment, infinite pleasure, infinite love. Just imagine all the goodness that you can. That's what Kabbalists discovered with that device that this force is. So how do you do it? You have to build a tiny part in you. And why do I say tiny? Because the device that you build, as you evolve spiritually through 125 degrees of development, then you're basically improving your device, you could say, right? So you build a device in the beginning, you can only tune it to a certain frequency, and then you get more and more finer and finer and finer tuning. You could think of it in Kabbalah as being surrounded by infinite light. So imagine that you're just a dot. So as a dot, the amount of light that can clothe into a dot is a dot. And that's what you feel, by the way. But those who started studying Kabbalah and feel this incredible upliftment and aha moments one after another, and everything is amazing. And a lot of people who study Kabbalah feel that, especially in the beginning. So that's nothing. That's just a tiny drop of light interacting with this dot that you have. Now, as you begin to build this vessel, then as the vessel grows, you can think of it like this maybe, although it's not exactly like this. It's more like revealing layers in that vessel. It doesn't matter. You can imagine it however you want. Basically, the more that you develop that internal device, the more of that infinite potential that you can interact with. And what's the goal of all this? It's to develop a vessel that is in complete equivalence with that force. That takes 125 degrees of evolving that device. That's what Kabbalists who have been through that entire path have found. And the final state, 125 degrees, is becoming completely equivalent to that force, And if you become completely equivalent with something, you become that something. So in a way, you become one with this force of nature, with this God. You become this force of nature. So hopefully that answers your question. Let's take a look at some more. Okay. Debbie is asking, so is the sum of all things the soul? It's a complicated question. The sum... Okay, let me try and put it like this. When you say all things, then you could actually mean a few different things, but let's say that all things is everything around you. So going back to perception of reality, how we perceive reality, what is everything around you? Do you even know what's around you? You're looking at a computer screen now. It's just some form of energy, right? It's just, according to your senses, then light hits the screen goes to your eye, you see the screen or the room or the wall or the keyboard or the people around you. But what are all these things? We don't really know what they are. We just know that they're some force of energy, I guess, that's outside of us, and we interact with it according to how our internal device interprets it, right? So the sum of all of these things is, in fact, not the soul, it's the light. And as you develop the internal device, that's what you discover, that there is nothing outside of you other than this force. All the people around you, all of the animals, the plants, the rocks, everything that is outside of you is pure, simple light. Okay, we'll leave it at that. Let's see what else. Okay, Torah Joe is asking how to intend this connection to be. That's a great question, because you're already asking about the practical application, right? How to intend this connection to be, how to build this connection. So it's pretty simple, actually, and we can even exercise this now. Let's do it right now. All of us together, about 200-300 of us in this very moment, and over the next few days, thousands of us, and the next few weeks, maybe tens of thousands. And it doesn't matter even when you're watching this, because whenever you're watching this, you can now connect to a point which is above time and space. And that point is carved into the nature of reality. It's like in the sci-fi movies that you have like this split of reality that you can go in and go out of and rise above time and space. So that's what we can do right now. How can we do it? Simple, just with wanting to tune our intention to the right place. So let's do that now as a practical exercise. Let's take a minute and let's imagine not only all of us that are watching now on YouTube, on Facebook, and wherever, but let's imagine all of humanity, 8 billion people that are, some of them have this point awakened in them. Most likely you have it if you're here and you feel that these words are nurturing something inside of you that has never been nurtured before. Then that's most likely this point that awakened in you. But there are also billions of people that have this point, but it's not yet awakened. So let's do a practical exercise now. Let's close your eyes if it helps you, and let's try and sense all of the desires, every single human being in the world, and all of us that are here right now watching together. Let's try and sense that connection. Let's try and feel that point that's inside, that yearns to break through, to unlock this higher level of reality. All of us together, let's try and feel that point of connection, that within that point, that we only try, we yearn, we aim for this connection. By doing that, we're already becoming similar to an extent to that force. We're already we're already becoming equivalent to it. And as soon as we become equivalent to that force, then we interact with it, we sense it. So let's take a few seconds and let's try and feel that connection here, right now. Now imagine that this connection that we're forming here, it's generating a force that's not only lifting your desire, but it's lifting the desire of every single person in the world, bringing them closer to ask, to search. It's like clearing up all of that fogginess that surrounds that point in the heart, which is basically the ego. And what we did now is it's not meditation, because Kabbalah doesn't deal with meditation at all. It's just an example of the simplicity and intensity and power of the wisdom of Kabbalah. And it's just an example. If you really want to take this seriously and you want to delve into it and you want to understand how to build that right intention, then you should sign up to Kabbalah. Linda, if you can post that link again. You'll be joining a group of people that yearn for this as well, which is incredible. And you'll learn not only the fundamentals of this entire method, through different courses we have online, but you'll also learn the practical application of it. So quickly we ran out of time. To go back to the first question, does God exist? So my answer, and the answer of the wisdom of Kabbalah, is it doesn't matter what the answer is. It matters what you can do about it. Can you discover this force? And to that the answer is absolutely yes. Every single person can. All you need to have is a desire, and with that desire you can start building that internal device that will bring you to discover this force, not to believe or follow blindly, but to attain it yourself, to become like it. So I hope you enjoyed the session. We're going to continue right now to the Kabbalah Zoom session, where Kabbalah students can continue and ask questions live, directly, with cameras, etc. You're welcome to join too. If you want to become a member, just check out the link that Linda just posted on behalf of Kabbalahinfo. And thank you all for joining. I really enjoyed it, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.